I think we're going to kick things off. So thank you everybody for joining us for my career story this month. It should be a really good event. We've got Sara Hansen, our board chair at HWS here today. A little bit of her background. She is the Regional Workforce Development Manager for Turner Construction. She strives to increase the number of individuals pursuing careers in the building industry, specifically skilled trades. And so if you know anything about our board at HWS, construction is one of our primary focus areas. And so we're super excited to hear her talk a little bit about what her company is doing in that area. Prior to Turner, Sara had 15 years working in state government, holding positions with Health and Human Services, the Nebraska Department of Labor. I feel like I've been there too at some point. Department of Education as well. Sara worked as an investigator for Adult Protective Services, reemployment programming, and business services. She's helped to create certificate programs for individuals with disabilities and individuals with barriers to employment. She also helped develop the Hard Hat in Hand program, partnering with education and community workforce programs to pipeline individuals into skilled trades. That program is now all over the place. As part of that, it also helped to foster relationships between union and non-union employers to help educate and upskill the current workforce, leveraging on-site project training and curriculum. So she holds a bachelor's in science from the University of Nebraska, Omaha in human rights and family and consumer science. She's the board chair of HWS at Heartland Workforce Solutions, and we're happy that you're the board chair. Thank you for your work there. She participates in several nonprofit workforce committees as she strives to increase programming for the untapped workforce. She's been married for 23 years and is the mother of 2 amazing teenagers. Strives to live every day by a quote from St. Francis: start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sara, and she's going to tell us all about her career pathway.
Thanks so much, Stan. Well, first of all, thank you guys for this amazing opportunity to be here and to present. And for anybody that's currently online, thank you again for listening in. We really appreciate it. This was a challenge for me, which I love challenges. That's what a lot of you're shaking your head. For those of you that have worked with me, it's you know, I'm always looking to solve problems. I always say it's kind of based on, there's an old kids movie that my children, I think, watched repeatedly, and it's see a need, fill that need. And so it's just a great way as I worked through going through my background. I'm a little bit older than some people in the room, I guess. And so and so going back to the very beginning of my career story and how that has shaped where I am today is kind of was kind of fun. So thank you, Jasmine, for this awesome opportunity. When I look back, you know, the very first opportunity to work where I actually earned income, I was 9 years old. I really wanted this microscope when I was 9, and my mom said, we'll figure out a way to fund it because I'm not buying it for you. And I'm like, okay. Well, there was this opportunity in the newspaper that you could go out and sell wrapping paper. And it's kind of like what they do in the schools now, where they have little fundraisers or whatever, but this was a door-to-door thing back then. So I went door to door through the neighborhoods and I sold wrapping paper to earn enough money. And I earned this prize. I got to earn this microscope. I was so excited of my microscope, which the cool thing was, is then I really treasured that opportunity because I had put in the hard work. I had to go up and knock on people's doors and ask them and find out what they needed as a service. And it really began my my desire to help other people find what they need and connect them to resources that they may not know existed. Now, at 9 years old, does everybody need, you know, wrapping paper? Well, I thought they did. Come on. So, so that was really my first opportunity for work. And after that, you know, at that time and that age, I started babysitting. You know, that was the big thing back then, taking care of kids. And I earned $50 a week to watch 3 children, all under the age of 5. And so, yeah, and so moms that are in the room are going, wow, where can I get that sitter? And I was certified at that time. I'd taken a class on CPR, so I thought I was pretty special in being able to help take care of these kiddos. But again, it was filling a need for somebody. And I just had that constant desire over and over again. I knew when mom and dad came home and they were totally exhausted at the end of the day, and I heard her, you know, not complain, but say, "Geez, now I have to make dinner. Now I have to make sure I pick up." So from there, understanding that need and planning ahead, the next day when she came home, I'm not gonna make salads, that's about as far as I got, but there was something on the table. I actually cleaned up. It was probably the first error I ever made in a job. I actually flooded their kitchen because I decided I was gonna wash the dishes and use their dishwasher, and I put the rocks up. So, but I learned from that mistake at that very young age. But my next challenge was I wanted a job that I actually got a check and I had to pay taxes. Sounds totally, you know, strange, I guess, to some people in the room, but I knew at that young age, you know, just things on the news and hearing people complaining about having to do this. I knew that those dollars were gonna be used for something else to help somebody that I didn't know, I never ever met, but that was gonna go into some fund that somebody else at a higher power, much pay grade above mine at that point in time, was gonna use those funds to help somebody else. And to me, that was really cool. Like, I could go to work, I could earn money for myself, and I could go buy what I needed and take care of things that I wanted it, you know, at that age of 12. But I could, with my paycheck, if I had an official paycheck, I could help somebody else. My mother said, "You'll be paying taxes soon enough, so wait as long as you can." So what did I do? As soon as I turned 16 in January, I went to my first job interview and I did not tell my parents. It was for a telemarketing firm. I went and they had open interviews. So I walked into this office building, similar to like this, and they ushered us into a room and they handed us a piece of paper and they said, "We'll call your name." And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, "And you're gonna have to read this script." And so I had no idea what was happening. I had never prepped for anything like that. Sure enough, they called me in and I sat before this woman and I looked down and I had kind of a unique voice. And I read the script. "Hello, my name is Sara Hansen. I'm selling such and such. And is there somebody there that I can speak to?" Supposedly I was clear enough because I got hired on the spot. Now I had to figure out a way to go home and tell my parents that I just got my first real job. It was also the first job I ever got fired from. But that entire experience that I had, I was able to collect my first paycheck. I learned a lot because I had to be on the phone. That was my job. I called people up and I sold these different subscriptions. It was a dining club subscription at that time, and trying to convince people that this was something that they really needed. I wanted to sell a service to somebody else that they needed. That's probably why I got fired, because at the end of the day, I was like, and they would tell me, "Well, you know, I'm a gourmet chef," or, you know, "We don't go out to dinner," or, "My husband has medical problems, so, you know, we have very set dietary restrictions." I would be like, "Oh, I totally understand. Thank you so much for your time." Click. That really wasn't what they were looking for. So on to the next opportunity that I had. And at this time, I'm getting ready for college and I really just needed to earn some money. So I went into the food industry. Everybody should work in customer service in the food industry. I fully believe if you have a child, if you ever have the experience, because nothing prepares you more to deal with difficult people than when you make the wrong sandwich. And so again, having that opportunity in my background and learning how to cope with rejection. "This is awful. You put 3 olives on my sandwich and I wanted 10. Or the bread is too hard, or the lettuce is too wilty." And being able to try to really be the best that I could at the job that I had, and know that no job that I was at was underneath me, but again, that same desire to provide and help and provide a service to people and help people. They were coming in, they were hungry, and I wanted to give them the best sandwich that they had. Now, I also, at times, you know, it got a little redundant, or there was something that wasn't exciting. So I always found a way in whatever job that I did to challenge myself. So if we had this massive lunch rush or whatever that was coming in, I knew beforehand I would time it, make sure that I had all of the facility stuff done, that all the napkins were full, that all the prep work was ready to go. And it was just a way that I did an internal challenge to myself to keep things exciting and motivating in a job that most people feel like you're collecting a check, go in and make your sandwich and done. And so it's just, all of that has really led to where I wanted to be. Work ethic was instilled at a very early age. Like you said, started at 9, really. But once I had that first job, then there was always the expectation to have another one. And so I continued to move through. I did insurance and I went to college. And I will tell you, I'm one of those people that when you read my degree, Stan, I had to go back and actually look at it because when I started in something completely different. I was very sick as a child, spent a lot of time in and out of hospitals. And so Nancy Drew was like my favorite friend. And so I read every Nancy Drew book that there was. And so I thought I was going to be the next best detective. Like that was the end all be all of what I thought I was going to do. So when I started college, I went into criminal justice. For those of you that know me in the room, you're probably going, really? Like I was going to be that sleuth. I was going to be that investigator. And then I realized, maybe not so much. I liked figuring and solving problems, but I wasn't sure that was exactly what I wanted to do. And so over the course of my college career, 5 years that it took me to get my degree, I changed my major probably 5 times. So I always tell when I speak to young people, there's a big push right now in education, and I'm part of that push to get people excited about what their next steps are, to really start getting certifications and getting additional training when they're in high school or when they're in middle school. At the end of the day, it's okay not to know what the heck you want to do. And that what you think you want to do, being Nancy Drew, could completely change. Now it's okay to totally know what you want to do, and that's the path that you're going to stay on. But it's also okay to completely change your mind all the time, which is what I did. But I realized all of those experiences continued to build upon where I wanted to be and how I wanted to help people. So when I graduated, I worked for Adult Protective Services. And I thoroughly loved it. I specialized in domestic violence and sexual assault, which doesn't sound like that would be, it was a very hard job, but it was a very rewarding job. I met people at some of the worst times of their life. And most of the people that I came and encountered in our local community didn't have anybody else that advocated for them. And that's why they needed me. So again, that desire to provide a service. What I learned wholeheartedly in that position is that you can't make people want to do something that they don't want to do, even if it's in their best interest. It was a really hard lesson for me to learn. But that whole experience, the 5 years that I worked for protection and safety, really shaped my ability to make sure that when I met with various individuals across our community, that they felt that they had the right and the choice to make the decisions that worked for them. Because everybody has a different background. Everybody comes from a different place. And that changes on a dime. And so that was a huge component to what I wanted to do or what I thought I wanted to do next. Well, and what I ended up doing next is I got married and I had kids. So, and I decided that that was part of my world that I just needed to devote a lot of time to, and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I chuckle when I say that because I was a stay-at-home mom for really what they would constitute maybe 4 months, because I always worked. I just worked around my kids' schedule. It took me a long time to not introduce myself as saying, well, I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years, because at the same time during that 11 years, I had probably 5 different jobs. I worked for a commercial cleaner. I worked retail. I worked in a nursing home as an activities specialist. So all of these different things played into it, but it was something that was fulfilling to me to be of service to others. Long story short, I decided when my kids went to school, I was going to go to school with them. Talk about a hovercraft parent. That was me. And so I became an aide at their school. Kindergarten and first grade. I loved it. All these little kids, the inspiring minds. I mean, nothing says service when you've got a kindergartner throwing up on your shoe. There is nothing like it. But I remember as I went to the first grade classroom, and one of the teachers there said to me, as I was working diligently, correcting papers and entering things in the Excel spreadsheets and creating new ways that we could innovate and inspire these young minds, what are you doing? That's what she said. What are you doing here? You have all of this knowledge and all of this background. What? She's like, I love you. You're a great assistant teacher, but you can make such a bigger impact if you found something else. Is this the impact that you want to make? And I knew if I wanted to be a teacher, I needed to go back to school again. It took me a long time to get through college the first time. I had to take the ACT more than once just to get accepted. All of those things. I'm like, I don't know if that's the direction. I've always learned hands-on. I've always experienced all of the things that I've learned from the jobs that I've done. And so I started looking. And lo and behold, there was this grant, which I didn't know much about grants at the time, for Department of Labor, Job-Driven National Emergency Grant. Really long title. But the whole goal was to help people find their pathway in a very specific line of work. Transportation, logistics, which we need a lot of. So I was really taken aback, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. And I interviewed, and you had to give a speech. And they said, you know, you have to give a 30-minute how-to of what you're gonna do. Okay, well, I was in the workforce, but not really in the workforce in that capacity that they saw. So my 30-minute speech was how to make the best chocolate chip cookies in 30 minutes or less. By the way, I still have that recipe and I use it a lot. And they said, love Jack, this is great. And then nothing, crickets. Stayed in Nebraska 4 months. So I went through, I interviewed, I believe in April, and I thought, well, if I could give my notice at the end of the school year, that would be perfect, right? Then I'd have my whole summer or not. And I was kind of fretting like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do if I have to find a sitter for my kids and blah, 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 and all of these fun things. And they never called. I got a call the last day of July and asked if I was still interested in the position. And I was set to go back into the classroom on August 25th. I had less than 30 days. I said, absolutely, 100%. Let me know what the next steps are. Click. And I thought, what am I gonna do if I make it through this whole next process, which I did. And that's where I had to learn how to resign from a position I loved. I loved being an assistant teacher in kindergarten and first grade, but I knew if I wanted to make an even broader impact and go back into this and get back into that world, I needed to take this opportunity. And so standing in front of my principal at the time and turning in my resignation as the school year is about to set off, she was not a happy camper. But I realized I knew it was important for both them, the students, because I probably wouldn't be as focused. And I also knew it was probably the best thing for myself and my family. So making that decision and being able to formally resign, I think that's something so important in people's careers paths that we struggle with that. Sometimes we stay in areas that we're not real sure about, or we wait till that next best opportunity. And it's really making that decision of, I know what's going to be best for me, and I need to take the next step. Or sometimes it's a little leap of faith going, oh, please, because this is a grants program that they say is good for 1.5 years, and we'll see if it continues to get funded. Well, I worked my tail off and worked for Department of Labor, and I got hired on full time, which was really exciting. It was one of the final things that my boss at the time did before he retired, was bring me on full time. And so right there was probably the second most impactful person. Mike Eastman probably doesn't know that. He actually went and got his CDL license after he retired, which I thought was unique. But he said to me, good things should happen to good people. And he said, I think that you're a good person. You came on board and you really want to make a difference. And he said, but I want to tell you, we have to do it before this date. So if you're going to accept, you have until the end of the workday today to make a decision. So making decisions quick and on my feet and things that could be impactful down the line and making sure that I had the time. So again, it was an amazing experience. And it led me to HWS. When we changed offices and I got to sit over here and meet all of these fabulous people and get to know all of the different programs that were in the building. Plus, as we know with Department of Labor, things move all the time. And I got to work in 4 different programs. I would say I worked in every program of Department of Labor's or Employment Services except for veterans because I'm a veteran. But it was an amazing opportunity to learn and grow and get back and meet some of the best people in my life that just really had the same desire to help people move forward. And again, you're meeting them at some of the most difficult times in their life. They've lost a job, things are turmoil in their family, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're upset, they don't feel appreciated, and you have the opportunity to help show them the next steps in their career, which I thought was just amazing. But again, I like a challenge. And a couple of years later, I came knocking. Department of Education, I thought, oh, education, I like education. Voc rehab, had an opportunity for a business account manager. Somebody that could specialize in working with individuals with disabilities. And as an individual who identifies as someone with a physical disability, I thought that was just the coolest thing ever because I always felt I needed to hide my physical disability from other people in order to continue to move up because it wasn't the next best shiny thing. And so what a cool opportunity to be able to help and serve individuals in their career path and have somebody give them a chance. Because in most cases, that's what they needed, somebody to support them, somebody to move them forward. So I was it was a brand new position, which you'll see a trend in my career story. Brand new position. Here you go. Here's a job description. This is what we think it's going to look like. It's kind of based off something that they're doing in another state. Run with it. And I did. And I got to take over Omaha's, Douglas, Sarpy, Washington counties, and I got to help out in Fremont offices and really meet people where they were at and help create and define new, I call them certification programs, but really meeting with businesses and helping them understand that they're missing out on a whole world of potential recruits by keeping everybody in a set box when they're looking at that. So it's really fun getting in and getting to meet. And again, it related back to when I was 9 years old and I was knocking on the door selling wrapping paper. Because I was knocking on a lot of doors, convincing a lot of businesses to take a shot on one individual or this individual. And I'll never forget in one case, I met with the case manager and they were fabulous. They were the top of the creme de la creme of case managers. But I knew if I sent that case manager in with this particular client to this business after walking the business and meeting them, this person would have a shot. So I decided to go with them. I said, you know what? I'd like to attend that meeting. This is a young person who had worked for multiple years at a huge box retail store in the area. He put bikes together and he was making minimum wage. Actually, it was above minimum wage at that time. I think he was making $10 an hour. 10.50, and he had been there for 3 years, not a lot of increases. His physical disability was deaf, so difficult to communicate, language barriers all over the place. People would come up behind him and different things that we dealt with. He wanted to drive a forklift. That was what he wanted to do. I want to be a forklift driver. I want to move product from one end to the other. I want to see that what I'm doing is helping individuals. That's what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a certified forklift driver. And they're like, Sarah, that's not going to happen. I go, why? I walk in all of these manufacturing companies and they have bells and whistles because nobody can hear when you're in the manufacturing plant. I mean, they make you put in earplugs. So everybody's on the even playing field. So when I was able to go into the manufacturing center and go, look, you might not, this is not a disability. Number one, you are creating an opportunity for somebody. But if I walk out on that floor, that plant floor right now, and I stand from here to here, do you think that that person's going to hear me? No. They have to find another way to communicate. It's the same situation. They gave him his opportunity. He was there, he did very well. He started making $25 an hour. So to go from $10.50 to $25 with 2 small kids and a wife at home was life-changing. So those things, again, it's that desire to help people and meet them where they're at, but it was a sales job. Because you were trying to offer them that opportunity, and that was great, and that was wonderful, but I need to convince that business, I need to sell them on, this is gonna be better for not only you, but it's gonna be better for all of the people that you're working with. Loved it. Opportunity came knocking again. I happened to be sitting in front of my LinkedIn or whatever, and this job description came across. And it was like everything I had done for the past 10 years. Education, creating programming, working with diverse and in underserved populations, trying to help businesses that didn't know what all their needs were, but that they needed a lot of help. Underrepresented business populations. The job description was just like 3 pages long. It's great. What the construction company, what do I know about construction? Very little. My biological father was a builder. I am not. I hang pictures, like I'm not. Although I do have to say, I did remodel my bathroom, which I was pretty impressed with, but that was paint and, you know, a little bit of spackle. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot. It's a challenge. Why not? So I walked in after a 2.5-hour interview with my boss. Yeah, right. And it took me 30 minutes. I was glad I took the afternoon off. I met with that person, and they're like, "Oh, we have somebody else. They're in from New York. We need you to go meet with them." Okay, fine. So, how do you feel about hiring people that have criminal backgrounds? Well, let me tell you how I feel about hiring people with criminal backgrounds. This is what I've worked with. This is great. Fabulous. Oh, by the way, we have this vice president that just happens to be in town from our Ohio office. Can you meet with him too? So I went and met with him, and he asked me a bunch of questions or whatever. Do you know blah, 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 whoever. Sure, went through all of that. 3 hours later, I walk out of that interview, and I was feeling pretty good. I thought, you know what, I think this is pretty good. And I started researching. This is a pretty big company. They're headquartered out of New York. Then I did a little bit more research, and I thought, they're a global company. Like, they're located all over the world. This is a big, that's pretty exciting. And lo and behold, they called. Oh, we'd like to offer you this offer. Well, I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And that's probably the first time I've ever consulted with my husband and said, what do you think? And he said, no. He goes, I think you should do this. I think you should ask for this. But this is, I remember for the state, so you can imagine everybody was what I made. You know, we do more with less, right? To make our impacts. And he said, I think you should go here. I was so excited about having this opportunity. Somebody taking a shot on what I had in my background. I'm like, you know what? I don't care what I go with this. I'll prove to them how valuable I can. Which later to find out probably wasn't necessarily the best way to do things. You should always counter. So anybody on the phone, anybody that's going future, you might want to rethink that a little bit. But I was so excited about the opportunity, it didn't really matter. And 5 years with this company, I've more than doubled my salary, amazing benefits, travel all over, to do what I set out to do. What did they ask for? We have this massive global client, and they want to create a workforce development program that's going to benefit people in skilled trades. I put that for you. But I want you to rethink the way that you do your HR practices when I do it. You're a huge company, like everything's electronic, everything's, you know, set up a certain way. They check a box that automatically eliminates it from the system. We're truly going to make an impact. We're really going to try to diversify this group. We have to change some ways that we think about things. So over the course of 5 years, we've systematically created new job descriptions. There are other workforce development managers across the Turner National portfolio. There are, and we've taken it so far that, because we like to share everything that we do, we've shared all of these best practices with our competitors. And they've run programs on national levels and been able to make an impact. So where before I could have made an impact just in my local community with individuals here in Nebraska, which I love, now I have an opportunity to make a global impact or national impact. And so in 5 years, where we started with the partnerships that we developed with HWS and the partnerships that we developed with educational partners here in Nebraska, we were able to take that model, that mold, and share it with individuals and show them, though, here's the difference between this workforce development program. We're gonna hire people up front. We're gonna offer them a salary from day one. We're not gonna make them jump through a hoop and go through more training and then say, well, now you have the opportunity to interview. So if you don't get a job, we're gonna start all over again. And we're gonna, if you interview up front and you're accepted, we are behind you 100%. We're gonna do everything to make you successful. We have individuals living in their car. We have kids that came to me and we had to take to get their driver's license. They have no form of ID. Well, I have a student ID. That's great. You graduated in May. It's not going to be successful now. All of these things that we had to work through that as a global company, never thought about. We didn't realize, you know, we had our standards in place. We want to offer opportunities to individuals, but we just, at that level, we didn't dig down deep into the weeds. And we have amazing people and we give back in so many ways, one of the most philanthropic companies, and we never pat ourselves on the back, which is still shocking to me. And we've been doing it for over 100 years. Millions of dollars go back into the local communities in which we build. It's great, but this was a game changer. And the game changer was that then we were able to bundle this up. We didn't charge it. We didn't say, oh, well, you know, this is ours and we're gonna put a copyright on it. We just said, here you go. Use what works for you, adapt it in your community. Oh, if you need help talking through WIOA or whatever it is to make those connections, by the way, here's your gift. Sarah will fly wherever you need her to go and she will talk to whoever you need her to talk to help you work through those processes. To me, that was just pivotal in, I was to the point as a regional workforce development manager where I had the opportunity to not just impact my local community, but impact others and continue to spread. So where we started with 9 individuals with a 90% diverse class is now grown to over 300 individuals that have gone through this program. And gotten into the skilled trades. And a young man who started in 2019 that stood up on that graduation stage and said, I was told I would never go to college, had 18 college credit hours before recognized certifications. Who was told, you know what, you better just figure out because you're never gonna be successful, you're not gonna find it, is now, he's worked for Turner, he's now driving heavy equipment for a major company in this community. Has his own house, does have his driver's license. He had a car, but didn't have a driver's license. I couldn't quite figure that out, but yes. So those are true impacts that that what you do and what I've been able to do through the careers, through my longevity of career story, which is inspiring to me. But again, I challenge all of you when the knock on the door comes, and it challenges you to make those next steps, or who do you want to impact going forward, that you listen, that you open the door and see what that next opportunity is going to be. My career story isn't at the same company for 25 years or 30 or 40 years. My career story is, who can I help? What do they need now? What do they need in the future? What services can I provide? And how can I dig in and do the real work to make them successful? Any questions?
I do, I have one. So throughout your career, you know, you've been taking care of others and helping others in other ways. So throughout all those years, how did you take care of yourself?
Oh, that's a great question, Jasmine. Well, I'll tell you 2 different things. One is I love to spend time with my family and I love to bake. So one of the things that I do is I will make, like, I'll spend a weekend and push everybody out of the kitchen and cook in just, I can do everything. I love that part of it. And then I don't have to do the dishes, which makes it even better. The other part is I am a pedicure junkie. And when they try to sell me on, well, don't you want the shellac or do you want this other, I go, I wear work boots like 90% of the day. Like the shoes I have on today are because I'm here. I don't care about the polish. I just want to sit for 35 minutes, not have anybody ask for anything, not have anybody talk to me for 35 minutes. And I just sit there and meditate. It's fabulous. But that is, I mean, and knowing when I'm at, when I've reached that peak, understanding today's not a good day. You know, it's been a rough week. It's been I need to take a moment. And that has helped me throughout the process. I didn't always used to be like that. I mean, my emotional score, I think there's like a book out there that you can read and all of that. And it was given to me by one of my development partners. And then for your book, I just took the test. But at the same time, knowing what those trigger points are was very question. Yeah.
You mentioned flying to places and helping people like work through questions that they have, like HR and things like that. Is there like a place where you flew to that like sticks out the most, that they had a question that like really needed extra digging into, or is there like a common question that comes up?
Well, I think the biggest one is realizing that although we all have a lot of the same similar organizations based on the same state federal funding that comes down, the problems that we have vary depending on the flexibility of the organization. If there's flexibility within the organization, you can help them format their language to make sure that they're meeting the needs of their client base. If they're very strict on some of those rules and we can't bend or this kind of thing or the other, you know, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, then that makes it more complicated. And that tended to be the question, well, we're out of time or we have this deadline. I'm like, do we really? Like really dig deep, is this really the deadline? And the other part is, don't take a no from somebody that can't give you a yes. When you're on the phone and you're working with individuals and they think this has got to be the person that we're going to work with, this has got to be the agency that we're gonna go to bat with. Maybe not. It might be the easiest check the box. They might be the most well-known check the box. But if they continue to say, no, this isn't gonna work, you know, this is how we do it here, I'm taking no from something that can give you a yes. You're trying to help people. Last question. Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of mentors did you look throughout your career to help guide you through that?
Well, I would say, as I mentioned, I had a really good concentration or focus from my mother on working. She was a single mom for a large portion of my childhood, and had to be the breadwinner and all of that. And so for her, putting forth that strong work ethic. But it was finding that individual at each organization that I was with that I knew was going to be an advocate. And it might not be your boss. It might be a person sitting in the pew next to you that had connections somewhere else or had connections in a different part of the agency, that they became and were those mentors that you needed to move forward in your career path. But I still give credit to that first grade teacher that said, what are you doing here? Because I think at that point in my life, I needed somebody to say, you know, I was perfectly content. I gotta work the same stuff with my kids. I get dinner every night, I clean, whatever it needs to be. But was I truly, and I feel like I made an impact, but was I truly making the impact that I was put here to? So it's always seeking out those, and I will tell you, I've had some pretty bad mentors in some cases. Like I've had some situations, I mean, I worked in various occupations. I've had some interesting bosses. I've had some amazing bosses, but I've had some people that have come across my path that have been outside of even my work area. So networking was a huge component. I joined a lot of networking organizations coming through that really helped me to find and meet other people. Anybody else?
Just going back to your jump over to the Department of Labor, at the time that seemed like a little bit of a risk because it was, you know, a temporary position potentially. So what advice would you give to others that are looking at opportunities like that where there's a little bit of a risk involved, but it's maybe something that they really want to do?
You know, when I was evaluating the risk that it was gonna take, I had to, we're in Nebraska, like we're short 25,000 people for the jobs that are here. Like I had to do a little bit of educational moment of myself and be like, so what if I go and I completely fail, or the grant runs out early, or whatever? What was the worst case scenario? What was I gonna run into? And when I could think through it that way logically, well, I'm making this amount of money. Could I find something else? You know what? I needed to take a shot. This is gonna open up this whole other avenue of learning for me and opportunity. And so that's what I told myself in that process, because it was something I had never done before. So I had no idea what I was doing when I first started. I mean, I had a guy go, "You're supposed to help me find a job." Like, do I need to help you find a job? And just continuing to push forward. And one part of my story that I kind of skipped over is through that process in that 11 years, when I said I worked all kinds of jobs, my husband became the major breadwinner of the family. And there's a constant joke at my company now, and I say I have two goals in life, and one is to impact people's lives on a daily basis, and the other one was to make more money than my husband, which I can successfully say that I'm there. But in the middle of that journey of back and forth and managing kids and home and everything else, my husband was diagnosed with brain tumor. Couldn't figure it out. I'm like, gosh, you're getting a little, you know, I know they say married couples are like, you experience different things, but this was unique. And the only way we found it is my 2-year-old actually flushed his contacts, and he had to go back and see the eye doctor because he was traveling. And they found he had swelling on his optic nerve. That's how they found it. So within 24 hours of seeing the eye doctor, we were in at the hospital with MRIs and being admitted for this serious condition. And at that point in time, I had gone back to work because he had been laid off from one of the companies that he had been at for 15 years, and I had taken an opportunity to move into something. So anything I look at now, I think of what we've come through with all of those situations. I'm like, do I get emotional about it? 100%. Because I push myself into whatever I do because I feel it's important. My company's paying me for a job that they want me to do. I know what I want to do personally. But yeah, going forward, I just think that there's always an opportunity.
I do have.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
considering the fact that you readily accept a challenge,
Yeah.
what do you find to be the biggest challenge in your current position?
Getting everybody on the same page. When you have a vision in mind on how you think things could be easier. I'm regional now, so I work in multiple states, which has different HR people, it has different managers. So you're managing across multiple platforms, and you see best practices in one area and you try to take that back. I'm orchestrating the concert, not playing in it, and asking them to, hey, this is a great idea. And so it's been a big challenge to make sure that individuals realize that I'm not telling you you're doing a bad job at all. You're doing a great job. What I'm saying is based on your skill set, I know this to make your life easier, and it would elevate what you're currently doing. So trying to provide, that has been a challenging part. Plus, I always feel it's important to lift up my team as much as I can. And so being able to receive feedback when individuals are critical of a situation that might happen, and being able to work through those conversations with my team and go, look, this is just one opinion of one day of one thing that's happened. And maybe it's a recurring thing, and we'll address that later. But at the same time, how can I help them as a manager and take those responsibilities on? And I do tend to take it a little personal when I can't elevate my team. So that's been a big challenge for me, is understanding that I can try to coach as much as possible, but if I can't get somebody there 100%, that's probably my biggest challenge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah, I've had the joy of observing some of your career path. And career pathing is a language that we use a lot lately. It seems like it's linear, but if we really talk to each other, we find out that it isn't that at all. So what have you learned about your own career path and yourself, and how does that propel you forward?
That although something seems a little frightening, it's okay to move on to that next step. Never lose sight of what your original, I want to use the word goals, because what my goals were when I was 20, what my goals are now that I'm pushing 50, it's very, very different.
Come on up, girl.
Yeah. Right? But being true to yourself, knowing like it makes a difference to me when somebody that I'm trying to help, I can't, or that I'm not doing it the right way, or and so that up and down process, and to continue to move forward and find those new opportunities. Plus, now that I'm at a point where I'm at, it's making sure that you're finding your replacement. I feel I owe it to my team, to my company, to my family, that if I won the lottery tomorrow, that they would all be okay. That they would all know that there's somebody else that holds that brain trust in those connections. And the other part I had to learn is a lot of people, we always hear that statement, knowledge is power. The more that I have, the more that I know, the more information I have about you, the more information I have about this, that's what's gonna move me up. And I feel like the more information we share is the way that we will elevate each other. When I sat in a sales meeting a little over 2 hours ago, and they're talking about who's got this contact and who's got this contact, I'm like, we all have those contacts. I might own a relationship because I've known you longer and we've seen each other in different aspects of our lives. The contact will always be there, and making that warm fuzzy handoff for people to help elevate them in their next steps. I think we owe that to each other to be successful. Good question. And you were right. I am so far over time. So, any other questions? Well, thank you for allowing me to come speak to you today, and for those of you online, I really appreciate the opportunity. And if I have any advice to give, it's to keep moving forward and remember that no matter where you are in your career path, that it is a path and that you will continue to move forward and backwards and forward again, but just keep on that path.
And I love the many different opportunities you've had in your career to choose to have an impact on people. My favorite quote is Jackie Robinson quote of life is not important except the impact it has on other lives. And so it's cool when you're talking about career pathways, making those conscious choices to actually have an impact. And so encourage others to do the same. Next month, we're going to have another great My Career Story, Amy Vick Gordon, is that how you say it? Talking about her pathway from being a teacher to educational administration. So that'll be the last Wednesday of July. Hopefully you'll join us then, but thank you again, Sarah. Thanks everybody for being online.